hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. Now that we've officially looked at all our fantasy stars of the week across the board in both the NFL and college football, we turn our attention to tonight's big doubleheader in the world of the NFL between the Titans and Dolphins in the AFC and a marquee NFC match between the Seahawks and the Lions. It should be two fascinating games, two very drastically different games in terms of storylines because of the trajectory of both of these teams, all four of these teams really, across these two games. And from a betting perspective, it seems very simplified in both of these games because you feel like the favorites in both of them are clear, but I feel like where these two games will become very interesting is because both of these games, for both of these teams' perspective in each of these games, they feel like they're on equal footing and that either of these teams, in both the Titans-Dolphins or the Seahawks-Lions, could come out victorious in any means necessary. Let's start off with the one that feels kind of more quote-unquote boring of the two. I don't like labeling a game boring, but it certainly feels like it's the undercard for tonight's big game in the NFC. Titans-Dolphins. Miami in this game only favored by one. Over under 36.5. Tennessee's money line is even. That goes to show how strongly they feel about the Titans as a bad team. Miami minus 120. So not a lot of movement in the betting lines in this game. But that's to be expected because both of these teams are in weird situations right now. With Miami, the QB situation started. Skylar Thompson also got injured in that game against Seattle last week. They had to bring in Tim Boyle, who was a practice squad addition a couple of weeks ago, to finish out that game. But now, Mike McDaniel announcing that Tyler Snoop Huntley will start tonight's game. And I'm actually really excited for that prospect because when I think about the Dolphins system, it certainly feels like some aspects of it, Tua is kind of holding them back. I get that the explosive play in this offense to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is a big part of what Mike McDaniel wants to do. When I think about it, if you want to be a team predicated on speed, you have to have versatility in your run game. And having a dual threat QB like Huntley really opens up, like I said when I was talking about Ashawn's comment a couple segments ago, it really opens up different avenues for your run game. Snoop Huntley can play a lot of option, a lot of RPO, and also, in terms of yards after catch ability, Snoop Huntley might not be as accurate a deep ball passer as Tua, but he's someone who can extend plays, someone who in the short to intermediate areas of the field is at least very decent, and can keep you on schedule at the very least in the passing game. On the Titans side of things, the reason why I feel like betting lines are a lot closer is because not just what happened last season in that very weird game where the Titans came back in improbable fashion against the Dolphins on the road, but it certainly feels like the Titans are their own worst enemy. It feels like I said, if Will Levis, didn't make that many boneheaded, meme-worthy mistakes, the Tennessee Titans could have a winning record. They were in the game against the Bears. They were in the game this week. They were in the game against the Packers. And it certainly feels like this game is winnable because of the uncertainty of what Miami is going to be. I get that, Will Levis will continue to look like a QB that might not belong in the league. But he still has the weapons in Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins to potentially make some noise in this game. Tony Pollard could have a big game. If you get the run game going, it might calm down. Will Levis get him into a solid rhythm? And who knows? This game could go either way. And I feel like the reason why it could be a boring game is because, the quarterback play could be inconsistent. That could also be what's exciting about it. Because on the defensive side of things, I think these are two of the more underrated and most disrespected AFC defenses in the league. On the Dolphins side of things, I think a lot of people gloss over the injuries and just think, well, if the Dolphins aren't healthy, how can I consider them to be one of the top defenses in the league? Well, they still are. They have a lot of depth, and I love when all their big pieces like Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and Ramsey play together. On the Titans side of things, you might not have a lot of big names. You only have guys like Arden Key, Harold Landry, Justin Simmons, Jeffrey Simmons. But they're very opportunistic, they're very timely, and they keep this team on schedule, surprisingly. You don't expect them to be as dominant as they are, and yet they're the reason why the Titans are as competitive as they are despite the offensive deficiencies. So, if you were to ask me, based off of the betting perspective of this game, who would win, I would certainly lean towards the Dolphins because they seem like they're starting to figure out life without Tua, and potentially Snoop Huntley could be one of the more attractive QBs in that system. But I can reason with someone who is saying that the Titans will make it closer than expected because I can't get over the fact that despite all the boneheaded errors by Will Levis, the Titans' offense still puts up points that keeps them in games, and their defense has been very opportunistic. They haven't, been turnover happy, but they've kept them on schedule to try and pick up wins by hook or by crook. So, if you were to kind of put me on the spot here and give you an answer as to who wins this game, I would say Miami. But it certainly feels a little bit weirder saying that now than perhaps 2 weeks ago. But for now, I'm sticking with Miami. Should be an interesting game. But let's talk about the marquee matchup. As Seattle, the 3-0 Seattle Seahawks, who would have thought about that? Going to Detroit, Motor City, a team that, still feels like it could be the beast of the NFC, could be one of the best, if not the best team in the NFC, but hasn't really shown it that much. So this feels like a very much get-right game for the Detroit Lions. On the Seahawks side of things, if they win this game, and this is a completely unbiased opinion, as I myself am a Seattle Seahawks fan, I think this will be the most impressive win by an NFC team thus far. You can make the case that the Vikings have 2 impressive victories over the 49ers, who a lot of teams thought would be the best team in the NFC this year, but have some injury problems, and the Texans, one of the top contenders in the AFC. But consider where Minnesota is right now and where Seattle is right now. At least Minnesota can say they have a full bill of health. Yes, no one expected them to win that game, but they were relatively healthy for it. Seattle is missing perhaps their top 4 defenders, and Kenneth Walker still isn't at full speed. And on top of that, their offensive line isn't up to par, and it's the weakest part of their team. And despite all that, they have a chance to go 4-0 and be a team that might be in the reckoning as a surprise team in the NFC. So this game certainly has a lot on the line. And I might be placing more weight on it than others might think, but it certainly feels like an opportunity, a unique opportunity for both of these teams to prove themselves. For Detroit, prove that their wonky sort of start was just a fluke, and for Seattle to prove that they can shock people this season. Detroit, 4-point favorite. The line moved a little bit, perhaps because of all the injuries Seattle has. Over under 46.5. Seattle's money line plus 165. Detroit's minus 195. So as you can see, the betting line for this game kind of tailored to Detroit. But here's the thing. This game feels like one where Seattle will be in it no matter what. And the reason I say this is not just the history, where Seattle last year won in Detroit and have now won 8 of the past 9 times these teams have met. It's more about what I see from the Detroit offense now and what I see from the coaches, most importantly. I think if you're Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson, you're kind of satisfied that you're still winning games with a more run-heavy approach. but you know that you can incorporate all of your different weapons like Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta to the best of your abilities more. And also Jared Goff as well. You know that Jared Goff is better than what he's shown you. So it's going to all depend on Dan Campbell's decision making. Is he going to allow Jared Goff to take advantage of this weakened Seattle defense? Or, is he going to continue to be that conservative guy and play into perhaps one of the more strong suits of the Seattle team? On the Seattle defensive side of the football, I think that's where they're going to win and lose this game. Because surprisingly, I think the offense has a chance, Yes, Kenneth Walker might be not fully healthy, but Geno Smith has been one of the more accurate quarterbacks, and the Lions secondary can be paused. Yes, Aiden Hutchinson's going to have a big say in how this game plays out. He's a game wrecker, and I'm worried about how that Seahawks offensive line will hold up. But Geno has been very fantastic to watch in terms of his decision making outside of structure, inside of structure, and in terms of getting the football out as quickly as possible. So this game thus becomes a game where it comes down to the little details of coaching and also what Seattle has left at its disposal that it can utilize, its biggest strength that it can utilize up to this point. And I think the biggest strength they've shown in their 3-0 start is their ability to get the quick passing game going, get the ball out of Geno Smith's hands, kind of hope that the offensive line doesn't commit many penalties, and somehow supplement it with a kind of piece together running game. Because right now, I don't know how to think about a slightly unhealthy Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet in this game. So look for the Seattle's game plan to rely very heavily on what its secondary can do in terms of takeaways. The secondary's been very good against Jared Goff these past couple of years, and what it can do on offense in terms of getting the ball out of Geno Smith's hand. For the Lions, it's going to be a big question of whether we see the same Lions we've seen over the past couple of weeks. We see the Lions we saw last year in their varied abilities on the offensive side of the football, getting Amon-Ra St. Brown open, getting Sam Laporta more involved in the running game, getting more physicality out of this entire team on offense. Frank Ragnow's absence is a bigger one than people might think, as their all-world center. But I still think this Lions offense will be okay. But, crazily enough, completely unbiased, I will take Seattle. At least to cover the spread, if not win outright. There's just that kind of feeling where Seattle has been riding on this wave of luck, but also showing you how they can win despite all their deficiencies. And that's the hallmark of a team that's really coming together, finding its identity under new head coach Mike Macdonald. I really think Macdonald is the fantastic right hire for this team and is going to show in tonight's game, win or lose. Because, yes, it certainly feels like a lot of people could be projecting a blowout, but the way they're playing could suggest that it's going to be closer than you think, despite all their injury woes and offensive line woes at that. So I'm going to take both Seattle to cover or even win outright. Not as necessarily confident, but still I'm standing by it. In the Titans-Dolphins game, I'm taking Miami just because I don't necessarily know how else to view this game. That will just about do it for this segment. Coming up next, we'll be talking both of these games in terms of popular prop bets you might want to place. We'll be right back to talk about them after this short break.